one already. It's been recorded, so.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome those in the room and our viewing audience to the Procurement Standards Board meeting for May 10th, 2018. I typed something that said March this morning, so that's what was my tentativeness there. The first item on today's agenda is approval of the previous meeting minutes, and I know that the committee members have had an opportunity to review those. Do we have any updates?
I would make a motion that we amend the minutes to reflect that a subcommittee was created at our last meeting to look at minority business issues, and that was to be chaired by Don Harden.
Okay, and I do remember us discussing that in our last meeting. Can I get a second?
Yes, can we particularly make that motion to somewhat amended, if I could, John, to make sure it captures what we find after reviewing the disparity study. So the whole point of that was just not to go off without any good intel, but after we received the disparity study, we would study, review it together, and figure out what kind of recommendations we could make in response to that.
Okay. I accept that amendment.
Okay, and I don't have any comments on that, but I do have a question. And this is for probably for you, Don, and you, Michelle, or you, John. Since we last met, the Mayor Briley has convened this Minority Business Advisory Council. Do we want to do anything in this motion in terms of making sure that we include that group will be consulted about our work, or we will report any of our information back to them? I guess what I want to make sure I understand how we want to interact, how our work intersects with that.
I don't think it needs to be as part of this motion, because this is just to correct the minutes to reflect that previous one, but that can be part of their work. The committee can work with that council.
I would agree.
Okay, I just think that that's really an important connect and intersect for this group.
And if I recall the composition of the Mayor's Minority Business Advisory Council, I believe that it includes you as an advisory member.
That's correct.
Okay, so I just wanted that to be noted for today. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Approval of the minutes as amended?
Approval of the amendment first, and then we'll do that.
Approval of the amendment. That's why I've got a lawyer here. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the amendment has been approved. Now approval of the minutes as amended. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Approval.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The second item on today's agenda is the purchasing agent's report. Ms. Lang.
Thank you. The report, the purchasing agent's report is included in your binders. I will go ahead and forewarn everyone it is significantly shorter than our last meeting, which I feel like was very voluminous, but there was a lot to cover during that Procurement Standards Board meeting. So if I could draw your attention to the section related to procurement operations, we do have a significant volume of work that the procurement staff continues to work through at a steady pace. A number of those folks are here in the room today, and I just really want to publicly acknowledge that we are continuing to work with a reduced staff, but these folks are stepping up and are really working to get solicitations completed and to manage the procurements that are necessary to assist departments in meeting their goals and objectives. A lot of the work that we've been doing is focused around fleet. We've done things from buying, major pieces of equipment for fleet to supporting the Opportunity Now initiative that's going to be launching here pretty soon. So it's been a significant amount of work and a variety of different kinds of work. Our first procurement newsletter is going to be going out to departments. The plan is for that to go out today. It provides the departments with a good bit of information in order to enable them to better use the purchasing process. So changes, staffing changes, additional forms, that they need to complete, or modified forms, different pieces of information that really enable them to be better participants in the purchasing process are going to be included in there.
What's going to be the frequency of that newsletter?
Much of it, it really ought to be quarterly, but I think that there will be times when there are, significant news items or changes that will dictate that we have a more frequent issuance. And so it may not be a newsletter as much as a news item that will go to departments. But this specific newsletter includes, again, a number of different things that are changes for departments. And it's really an effort to make sure, process changes, to make sure that they understand exactly how to navigate those changes and be, again, more effective participants in the process.
Are you going to set that up so people can subscribe to that so that they can get notices when the newsletter is issued?
We can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, is this for the general public or maybe, I think you would emphasize departments. So
Yeah.
Is it
Maybe it's
internal
both.
to Metro or?
Well, the goal there, and certainly open to how we look at that, the focus of it right now is largely on user departments, so that they can experience efficiencies in the process. But, to the extent that we should be looking at the kinds of information that should be more public-facing, we can do that.
I think that would be terrific if you had just kind of I see a need for an internal focus, but also an external kind of letting our suppliers know
Yep.
what's going on as well.
Yeah.
Just for information.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
The next item included here in the procurement operations section is related to our ongoing internal audit. The internal audit division continues that work. They are focused specifically as objectives on determining the extent to which the procurement division is processing solicitations and issuing awards in compliance with the regulations to the procurement code, as well as the specific sections of the Metro Code related to assistance to small, disadvantaged, and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, as well as compliance with the procurement non-discrimination program in terms of the city's operation and administration of that program. The scope covered solicitations that were completed during the period of July 1, 2015 and to June 30, 2017. So the scope really predates my time in this role, but we have, and I want to give some, as the young people say, shouts out to Terry Troop, who's been really instrumental in pulling information that the auditors need to be able to complete the work and devise their samples. So within the next couple of weeks, we have a draft that we're looking at. The exit interview should be completed, and then the observations that are included in there, along with the full report, will go to the audit committee.
Yes, I just can't wait to hear from Mr. Swan about that.
Yeah. So, my goal with this audit, just, as a point of information, is to really use the information that's in there as a basis for being able to, implement some improvements. Looking at the draft and some of the observations that are in there, we've already begun to look at processes and procedures and identify the extent to which we can improve those and, make sure that we address those specific items.
I sit on that audit committee, and Mr. Swan did have this in his long-term kind of audit plan to come to purchasing, and I actually sent him a letter and asked him to expedite that review because of the change in leadership, and that I wanted to make sure that Michelle had a clean slate. So I am also looking forward to seeing the results of that review.
Great.
Okay, so moving on to major procurements. Again, there was a significant volume of procurement activity that is going to be detailed more in the Key Performance Indicators report. It's in your binders, and our plan is for Terry Troop to give us a high-level summary at the end of this report. But of specific interest, again, those major procurements, contract awards, I should say, in excess of $10 million. Again, let's see, we had contract for design build services for our new Bellevue Community Center and ice rink. That was awarded to American Constructors at a value of $26 million. We have a contract that is currently in development. It has been awarded, but the contract is still being developed with an estimated total contract value of $20,895,000 awarded to Bell Construction for design build services for a new Davidson County Sheriff's Office. Another contract of note, it is a revenue generating contract, but it is one that has significant, fiscal implications, awarded to Fairgrounds Speedway Nashville, and that was for the Fairgrounds Racetrack Promotion Operation and Improvements.
Okay, the Sheriff's Office project, that's nearly a $150 million project. Or I don't even know what the number is anymore, but it's a lot of money. So I'm just wondering, what's this $20 million specifically for? This piece.
This piece is based upon the construction.
Is this for the headquarters?
Yes.
The new headquarters?
This is the headquarters portion of the overall project.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's based upon the estimate or the, I don't want to say bid, but the value that was submitted or offered to Metro for that specific work.
Okay. He's got some big projects going on. They are all kind of happening together. Okay, thank you.
So what you're saying is that we have roughly $80 million more of work coming over that we don't have currently.
No, I mean, I'm talking about the building
Yeah,
across, the jail.
Lumping all that together.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you drive down James
Gotcha.
Robertson Parkway, you'll see.
Okay, yeah. That one was on your previous report.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right.
On the fairgrounds, in what way does it generate revenue? What is it's just concessions kind of a thing, or?
Terry, do you want to talk about how that revenue structure is set up?
Well, it's not really, they get a percentage off the tickets, but then they guaranteed a certain value of, I don't remember the value off the top of my head, that annually would be given to the fairgrounds.
Okay.
So, and then if they get a percentage off the promotions for sponsorships and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then they're gonna improve
Yeah, make
improve the
improvements.
racetrack. They're paying for the capital improvements they get with the racetrack.
Okay.
That a 5-year contract? Somebody asked me that.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
told them it was 5 years.
5 years.
And there's a specific element in that contract or in the solicitation that related to community input, ensuring that they had good community input. Yeah.
At all times.
Okay.
And they've got restrictions in there. It also talks about, there's restrictions in the hours that they can run the track and have different events, and that they have to coordinate with certain things and have to have the approval of the executive director or the fair board.
And part of their proposal included having a good plan for how they were going to do that. So they were evaluated on that.
Thank you.
Okay, from a staffing perspective, at the last meeting, I talked about really being at a significantly reduced staffing level. We continue to kind of work through that process and get back up to full staffing. Since our last meeting, we've had Ms. Christian Watkins Hubbard, who's right here behind you, who has joined our staff. Christian comes from Ingersoll Rand, where she did quite a bit of work related to pricing forecasting and project management. So she brings some skill sets that are going to be very beneficial to us here. And we've also had Ms. Karen Davis, who's behind me here, who's joining us as a member of the Procurement Resource Group. And Karen is joining us from Vanderbilt, so she was previously employed at Vanderbilt. Also, since our last meeting, Ms. Angela Doss has moved to additional opportunities in the Accounts Payable Division of the Finance Department. So on the purchasing side specifically, that leaves us with one additional position that needs to be filled. And we've got some, we've had a continuous posting for the position that's out there, so I think we have potentially some options there to go ahead and get somebody in who's got the skill sets necessary to be a good addition to our team. And once we have that person on board, then from a purchasing perspective, specifically, we'll be fully staffed. One procurement, I mentioned that one procurement officer 2 position is left. The previously vacated procurement officer 3 position in the business assistance office has been filled. We were able to hire from within on that, so we have a promotional to Ms. Tina Burt, who is also behind the board members here. She's been promoted to a Procurement Officer 3. She was previously a Procurement Officer 2, so what that does is leaves us with a vacant Procurement Officer 2. So we're kind of moving the pieces around. Once we have that Procurement Officer 2 position filled, then the Business Assistance Office will also be at full staffing. Any questions on that? All right. Staff development. The National Institute of Government Purchasing has an annual forum in different parts of the country each year. This year, they've requested that I serve on the steering committee for the forum. Much of that is because the forum is going to be in Nashville, which it hasn't been in Nashville in eons. Last year it was in Salt Lake City, Utah. Jervell Watson, who's here behind me, also serves as the Forum Volunteer Coordinator, which is no small undertaking, working with the National NIGP to coordinate volunteers to assist and support with the forum here in Nashville. We've reviewed our budget information and determined availability to send 4 staff members to the forum. Fortunately, because the forum is here in Nashville, that eliminates the need for travel and lodging, so we're really strictly looking at registration cost for the forum, which is really a big deal. That is consistent with what was reported at our last meeting around really working to develop staff and move them toward certification, and their attendance at this forum will increase or improve their eligibility to sit for the certification. So you have to have so many hours of professional development to be eligible to sit for the certification exam, and this will lead to that. I've included for you inside your binders just a summary of the course offerings that are going to be at the forum, and you guys can take a look at that as you like. They've got a lot of really good offerings, and they've brought in people from all over the country who have expertise in government procurement to provide those, to lead those courses. I was also pleased to note that they had a specific course offering, which is a departure from some years past, and diversity and procurement as well, which is headed up by one of the nation's foremost experts in diversity business, Ms. Colette Holt. So it's a good opportunity for a variety of staff members to get some good training and information at this forum.
Do we have any finance professionals within our office that are participating on any panels as a speaker?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't heard that. Have you heard any of that on the steering committee calls? Yeah.
Okay. Are there state people on there?
There are a number of states.
Yeah. But, you know, to that point, the state and the airport authority, as well as Nashville Electric Service, have been historically more active in the local NIGP chapter than we've been. We've really made a push to kind of reinvest in that as a professional development opportunity for staff, you know, providing memberships and opportunities to attend those meetings, one for the purpose of gaining additional knowledge, but also for networking with, you know, peers and other buying entities. So I think that we could see, you know, some additional opportunities for the city to be involved and to be working to lead some of this work in the future. Okay, so the BAO staff on the DBE utilization side, BAO continues to work to promote DBE utilization in city purchases. There's an error in the report there. The DBE utilization for the last quarter is included in your binder, and Brian Gleason will provide us with a high-level summary again at the end of this report. And finally, I'd like to talk about the disparity study and to give you a brief update on the disparity study work. It continues with a number of deliverables being submitted to Metro. It is nearing completion. The date for completion is targeted at June 30, 2018, and we are on target to complete the study within that time frame. We have all of our statistical and anecdotal data collected, and our consultants are now conducting the subsequent analyses that are necessary to complete the study and then provide those drafts for review to the Finance Department. Any questions on that? Okay. And that concludes my report.
Okay, is this when Mr. Gleason was going to present his
I think
information?
it's Terry and then Brian.
Okay.
Yes, you can see that for the third quarter, the KPI, one of the questions that was asked at the last meeting was whether we were up or down. Compared to this quarter to the previous 2 quarters, I can tell you that the number of RFPs is down and the number of ITBs is down. I would kind of keep that in mind, but I think that's because we were short-staffed in some ways and we couldn't get them back out because we couldn't overload the staff with more work. The number of A&Es did go up, but the number of sole sources, less than 250, were down, and we actually had 2 that were over 250, and those are all police-related contracts. One is ShotSpotter, and the other one was Hexagon. And then the number of sole brands has went down, and the number of emergency approvals has went down.
So almost everything in that top box is a lower number.
I mean, it's just, is that a typical decline for a quarter or something for this period, or?
Or do you think it because you were short-staffed and you just couldn't get to it?
Yeah.
Well,
I think some of it with the top part of that chart, absolutely. The information at the bottom of that chart, I think what you see is a more of educating the departments on what a difference of a sole brand, a sole source, and emergency is. That education has taken place, and since they've become more educated, we end up with more solicitations that we're trying to get out.
Sure.
So I think what you'll see next quarter is probably an increase in that number.
Did the request from departments, functional departments, slow down?
No.
Okay.
If not, they've increased.
So they're waiting in the queue, so to speak.
Yeah.
That just means that they're doing the right thing now.
right.
Yes.
And if I can add to what Terry said, specifically on the sole source and brands, we talked a little bit about the process for really scrutinizing those and vetting those more. I think that the numbers of approved to the point that she made is down because that process is engaged. And if we can find somebody else, I think we had a conversation yesterday about one, it's like, we can find 3 different folks. You can't send 2 sole source requests for 2 different vendors to provide the same service because it's not a sole source. So we're, kind of vetting those in a way that really helps us to ensure that we're applying, the code and the regs as to the extent that we can do that, and that those procurements are consistent with that. So,
Okay, I want to zero in on emergency. Is that an emergency because somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do, or was that a real emergency?
That's such a good question, because I think the answer to that question depends upon who you ask.
Emergency because of delay?
Yes.
Emergency because of delay, or emergency because we didn't get started in time, or emergency because we need it next month and we got it to you this month.
So what trend did you see in this 12?
I'm not going to tell you that there are 0 emergencies there because departments didn't get started in time, but they are ones that, consistent with the code, would really negatively affect the functioning of metro government if we did not solicit or procure them in that manner. What we have done is try to apply a lens of true emergency to this.
So I wanted to know what that is.
Yeah, we've tried to apply a lens of true emergency to it, but if it is going to negatively affect the overall functioning of metro government, then, we're making a decision that it is an emergency because the city would
And
come to
emergency
an home.
contracts can't be more than a year, is that right?
There's a limit. There's
Yeah.
a limit. I do know there's a limit.
A lot of those we make them for 6 months. We make them for 6 months, just to give us the time to get the
I just
procurement
want us
process
to pay attention
completed.
to that number, and because I'd like to have some comfort to know that if something's listed as an emergency,
That it really is.
It's really an emergency, and not just because people were delaying activity and then it became an emergency.
And we've had that discussion. We've had that discussion with departments. We had one in particular that came in and was like, well, let's do an emergency because then we'll know how this is going to turn out and we'll have a little time to make this. And it's like, no, that's really not an emergency. That's an efficiency or a convenience,
It's a
I should say.
strategy.
Yeah, a convenience for you, but not really an emergency based upon the code and the regs.
Right, because emergency can feel like safety.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And convenience,
Sure that
yeah.
some bricks have fallen off a building or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind
When
of,
we
And
had
then
the
there's
flood.
we had
Oh,
one where there was a
So-
sinkhole that popped up,
right,
you know, at a
Emergencies
playground.
should be
That's
rare.
an emergency,
Those
you
should
know,
be
because
small
somebody could have
numbers and
been
rare.
injured.
right.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's a maintenance issue, you know. Separate.
yeah.
And I want to draw your attention because you'll notice if you were to compare the previous quarter's contract amendments have been up tremendously. But a majority of those are assignment amendments where companies have bought
Changed their
out and
name.
changed names. And we are seeing, we're seeing at least a new company every week where someone bought someone out or changed names, and we have a contract with them, so we have to go through and make
amend
them-
every
and amend
contract.
everything.
The unfortunate part of that is that there are some where the change in ownership occurred quite some time ago, and the city didn't know about it. We weren't informed in any manner, and so we've been able to work through those and find them via the iSupplier process.
So are they required anywhere in the process to notify us?
Yes.
They should be,
The
yeah,
contract language states it.
they should be. They should be
Send
giving
them
us
a nice
notice
little
of
follow-up
changes.
letter and say,
Some do it really well, some do not. In researching, we actually found one that had changed names previously.
you missed one.
They didn't know, yeah, we had no idea until we started doing the research on one.
I don't even know how you would even know that, John. I don't know.
Couldn't.
You couldn't. Okay.
We find a lot.
I just
from the
always look for
Secretary of State's-
stopgaps, you know, just kind of like, is there a way to, I don't think there's any way
They
you
have to
would know.
register that. We'd have to be tied in with the state, I would think.
Yeah,
And-
And that's a,
Yeah.
with the
that's
business
another,
license.
yeah, that's another,
Secretary of
that's
State.
another position that you don't need to fill, right?
Well, I
If
think that,
somebody's out there looking at every contractor we have, we could spot check them, but I mean, you can't, you don't have.
well, I think that goes back to your point about having a newsletter that goes out to our vendor base too.
And maybe there's a bucket in there. Remember,
Yeah.
if you change ownership, you're supposed to notify us.
And we've been able to collaborate with the Division of Accounts to ensure that when we have those ownership changes, that we're, you know, reflecting the changes that also need to be occurring in the accounts payable side, and that we've got good collaboration there, that we've got good documentation. We've had good feedback from Phil Carr about what kinds of things he needs to make sure are in place in order to ensure that we know the validity of the ownership change and et cetera, so that they can make the changes in the on the accounts payable side as well. So, you know, there's been an opportunity for us to develop a good process and to work to make sure that we're covered in terms of ensuring that we've got contracts with actual businesses. You know, folks, when those changes are made, that we're reflecting it in our contracting
I
documents.
think that's an excellent heads up for the newsletter, because if it goes out to the departments, you're gonna have the clients, internal clients to you guys, and then they're the ones that's interfacing with the vendors. You know, and if it's likely that the vendors will say, hey, you know, we're changing our name, we got bought out. They would know, so they could also say, hey, you need to make sure that you have a formal change with Metro iSupply. So I think that's a good
Okay, so
a newsletter could serve to do a lot of things.
Okay, Terry, I'm distressed by this report
Oh, no, don't be
because I see in February that finance had one RFP for $1 million and it took 343 days.
It's credit card processing.
Okay, do we know why that took 343 days?
The credit card
That's a long
processing.
time.
When did that one start? Sandra, when did we start credit card
You know,
processing?
we could have been in negotiations with the provider and there was some
Well, it
term
was
that they just wouldn't agree,
It was-
that they just wouldn't agree to. I don't know.
Protest.
Yeah, it was a multi-round solicitation. It was protested. You know, we completed the protest. It was not appealed. But I feel like there were some
But those
other
are the
issues
type
with
things
one.
that can drive a specific procurement, particularly protests and appeals, when you start looking at that time. That's a long,
That's almost a year.
almost a year for that one RFP to get completely done. Okay. Do any of you all have any questions on that table that she's got there for Terry that you'd like to know more about?
I like the format.
You hear
You
that?
like this?
He like that.
I think it's important to know who we're doing business with.
Okay,
Okay,
No questions?
okay, thank you.
we'll turn it over to Brian.
Brian Gleason, you are recognized.
The business utilization for quarterly highlights for FY18 third quarter are as follows. Metro spent a total of $11,634,123 with total MWBs, which includes $5,311,762 spent with prime contractor MWBEs and $6,322,361 with MWBE subcontractors, which represents 95% of total of all procurement transactions. On the SBE side, Metro spent a total of $55,936,361 with total SBEs, and that includes $44,254,916 that was spent with prime SBE contractors, and $11,681,445 with SBE subcontractors, which represents 28.58% of all total procurement transaction. The two together totals 34.53%, both at prime and subcontractor level. The detail can be found on the second page, where it breaks down general government subcontractor activity as well as the ethnicity.
I think there's an important note to make about the school board reporting, which we had not gotten in a number of months, but we did receive for this quarter. There had been historically a breakout to distinguish between those central purchasing items and then those school board construction purchasing items, and they're collapsed together. So we have a single, you'll note that difference if you were to look at previous reports, where there are two lines for MMPS, there's a single line now.
Okay. Are the totals consistent with what you saw in prior periods? I mean, do you see anything?
For school boards or just in general?
Just schools
Well, we weren't getting reporting.
at all, because you hadn't gotten them in years?
We weren't getting reporting on, when we did get reporting from schools, it was on the construction side only.
Okay.
And now we've gotten kind of a consolidated package of everything.
And so it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, MBHA spent 50% of the overall DBE spends out of this group. Is that what I'm reading?
With this reporting here, one thing we can't verify or validate how they're actually tracking. Are
Okay.
the ethnicities, how were they verified? We know that based on the certificates that's provided to us, we can vet the numbers to Metro.
Okay.
And so as for the other agencies, we don't know what method they use, how they go about validating.
Okay, but so that 50% is of their spend.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But to Brian's point, you've got 100% of the spend at Metro Transit. Well, of course, that's not 100% because they're not giving you their total spend
Exactly.
with non-MWBEs. So, yeah, they're giving us the breakout across the various ethnic groups, but their total population is disadvantaged business, not total spend, based on the way they report it.
They get about almost $50 million subsidy from the city. So that's probably missing something.
So, so how do we write that? I mean, you're putting it on your report.
Yeah.
I mean, we're making it part of this report. How do we get that official information for
Yeah.
them to drive down.
I think that's fair, and I think it's consistent with something that we talked about previously, which was a request from the chair of the Procurement Standards Board.
For them to come speak to us.
That's right.
In a subsequent meeting.
To come in and talk about the process and et cetera. I mean, we've given them a standard format in an effort to really kind of guide the way that the reporting should come in. So we have a web-based standard format that we provide to everybody to submit their numbers, and much of that, formatting, there are places where the fields are left blank, basically.
Okay.
So if we were to bring them in to kind of talk about generally what it should look like, it would be
Put that down as
good.
an action item so we don't lose track of it.
Absolutely.
And just say we'd like to get a report from each of them about how they're doing their tracking. And particularly because in my conversations with Mr. Starks at the convention center, he is submitting some impressive numbers for the Convention Center Authority, and he recently presented those in terms of DVE participation. So I would like for him to come in and speak to us, and his comment to me is, Talia, it's all about outreach. You got to be aggressive with your outreach to these companies and find them. You can't wait for them to come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's,
Convention center's not shown.
And they're not even shown on this list, but he's presenting some pretty amazing statistics. I'd maybe like to hear him first because he's doing something right.
So is there an interest in
Kudos
having
to,
them added
Charles
to this
Starr.
report?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can do that after he can come and talk to us as a
sure,
group.
sure. Yeah, everybody's waiting on this disparity study, but we have to,
Move.
do things right away to see what, Brian, I know that you guys work hard to try to get people in, so be nice to understand what could be done to improve, to get more people at the table. And I don't know if you have anything ahead of.
The information that he supplied to us in terms of his DVE participation, and just so you guys can share it with the whole board, I'll give you copies of those slides, and then maybe invite him in to come talk to us.
Yeah, he has a good staff over there. Jasmine,
She's doing something right.
yeah, she does a good job. Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions of Brian?
Oh, good job, good information.
Prompt pay, is the prompt pay in here just FYI?
It's informational.
So now we will move to the next item on the agenda. Is that where we are, Michelle?
Which is the business analytics. I'm not sure if you got this, Talia, or not.
Finance managers.
It's in the front slipcover there.
Oh, okay. Okay, Michelle, I'm going to come back to you. I think in our last meeting, for our discussion, we talked about, what types of business analytics might be needed. And I think I challenged the group, since they're the expert in procurement, to at least bring back some information to the board in terms of what they consider to be best practice measures. So is that what this document is, Michelle?
It's in the front cover, yes.
Okay. Okay, so
Pass
you're
those
going
down
to
for me, please.
walk us through this?
Yep. And so I'm going to fully disclose initially that I think that this process is one in which we engage in continuous improvement, that we're constantly kind of looking at performance management, performance metrics, and adding to these. I think that there can be some risk to having too many measures. There are challenges that are inherent in not ensuring that you're measuring things that are aligned with your goals and objectives, and in some instances with the administration priorities to some degree, and ensuring that we're not attempting to measure things that, by virtue of the data collection related to that measurement, is so laborious and wrought with the potential for human error that it almost yields you unusable data. So I just want to say that first, that I've thought about that.
And can I add just one more comment? You had mentioned to us previously about you guys becoming accredited. I would like to make sure that as you talk through these, whether or not you're still interested or pursuing that accreditation framework, because I know that there would be some specific activities that you would have to track and have available to whatever governing body that is before they would provide you that accreditation. So if you could just make sure as you walk through this that you speak to whether or not you're still pursuing that or not.
Well, it is something that, we're very interested in. I think that there are some steps. I know that there are some steps that we have to take initially in terms of looking at, staffing levels, et cetera, before we can really start focusing on the accreditation. But there are some elements of the accreditation that speak to your strategic planning process, having certain policies and procedures and code and et cetera in place as an organization that we automatically, we're going to meet by virtue of how we're structured. There are some specific elements of the accreditation that speak to the professional capacity of your staff that we've talked about in terms of getting staff developed and et cetera, that we need to work toward. So I've gone through the National Institute of Government Purchasing actually has the accreditation model. And so I've looked through the accreditation requirements that are included in there, and there are a number of them that we're still very deficient on.
Okay. Well, I would just encourage as we have this discussion and we kind of make decisions about what we think is important, that we pick the things that are multi-use, that we could use it on both fronts to support that effort.
And that there's an alignment there. Okay. So again, the paragraph below the title here on this first sheet really kind of gives you some feedback from the Institute of Governmental Purchasing about how performance management really should be approached, and the basis of strategic planning, or strategic planning really being the basis for your performance management efforts. And so I see this as an opportunity for this board to really exercise some oversight that perhaps had not been exercised previously, to really help the procurement division and function be exactly where it should be based upon the metrics that we come up with in our review of those metrics and our performance against those. So the recommendation would be that our metrics be focused upon economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, and that we use what we learn as an opportunity to engage in actions that will be specific to improving, the overall procurement organization. So we should be only measuring those things that are going to be aligned with, our goals and objectives, and then we should be able to use what we learn to improve that, is my thinking on it. So the recommendation is that we focus on 4 specific broad areas related to our performance measures, that they be centered on cost savings or avoidance, that they be vendor related, focused on procurement efficiency and professional development. I'm hesitant to have more than, 4 or 5 in each one of these areas. I think that there are some secondary measures that we can add, but I think we really need to be anchored in our methodologies for collecting data and at least have one cycle of performance metrics and review before we start looking at the addition of additional, or the inclusion of additional measures. That's my recommendation. So on cost savings or avoidance, that we would be collecting data related to, of course, our organizational budget, our total procurement spend, the percentage of our spend through cooperative purchasing, and total savings achieved through negotiation. Now, we've looked at savings in a variety of different ways in the past. I know that you've had a lot of interest around how we look at savings, looking at negotiated savings, budgeted savings, and then historical savings. There are a number of factors around savings that affect our ability to have really good, solid information that you can then look at and say with some degree of certainty that those savings are real. I think the place that we have the most, what's the word I'm looking for? influence as it relates to savings is with those negotiated savings. The budgeted savings really come from a budget estimate that's provided by departments, which we don't have any ability to really control that, nor do they have any uniform starting point in terms of developing their budget estimates. So they would be all over the place. They may suggest that the budget is, $500,000, but really for what they're buying, the budget is really $700,000. So your savings are already inflated or, deflated depending upon the way that the estimate goes. So the recommendation is through negotiated, which this, unit would have an ability to influence.
Which means somebody submits a bid for $1 million and you negotiate them down to $9 million.
Right.
That's a true.
That's real.
That's real.
Right.
Compared to those budget numbers that people were.
Or if you got
Or historical, which may be influenced by market factors, again, that are outside of your control.
Right.
Or if
That
you-
makes more sense.
Or if you're buying pumps and somebody, functional area department, engineer gave you a price, he's trying to cover his budget. He gave you a high price, you can get online and say, well, you know what, these pumps are much less.
Yeah.
But there may be something we don't know about internet versus what they're telling you, but at least you don't want to start out with a high number. So that was my whole issue about cost savings. You're inflating a number.
Because we're getting these thousands of percents that.
Well, the other danger, too, with historical savings is that unless you're procuring one time to the next exactly the same, any fluctuation or deviation in terms of the scope or any items that you're procuring automatically creates apples to oranges, instead of apples to apples. So to me, the negotiated savings it makes the most sense.
Do you want to keep going?
Yep.
And I do want to make sure, because there's a lot listed here, that this is not going to be overly burdensome.
No, well,
to your team.
I'm going to come back to you and tell you which ones are really going to be new.
Okay.
Okay? Because, I thought about, part of that is how big of a deal is it to collect this data?
Okay.
Which then impacts the frequency with which you collect it, and all of that kind of thing. Vendor-related, the items listed here are active suppliers with contracts greater than $1 million. The average number of suppliers responding to competitive solicitations, and then as a breakout of that, the average number of disadvantaged suppliers responding to competitive solicitations. Our overall spend with disadvantaged business as a group, and then our average spend with individual ethnic groups and women, and then the number of vendor debriefs that we conduct, which we do. But I think that there's some benefit to knowing the extent to which we're doing that, because the hope is that the vendor debrief process is really enabling those vendors to be better offerers on future procurements.
For your second and third bullets under that category, I would like just for those to be the numbers instead of averages. I don't know what the average is.
Okay.
Average of what?
Okay. Okay, under procurement efficiency, this is much of what we already provide to you today. The numbers of ITBs and RFPs that are issued, the numbers of contracts awarded, POs, et cetera. And then the percentage of sole sources approved. So as a portion of the total sole source requests, what percent of those are approved? If you'd like to have a breakout number of those, kind of like what we have in the report here, we can keep that. But I think it gives you some sense of the extent of the requests versus those that are actually approved. And then from a professional development perspective, the number of employees with certifications, which will be, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4 right now when you think about it from a BAO and a purchasing perspective. Looking at spend per employee on professional development and training, so we can kind of hopefully have some sense of, return on investment. And then the number of training hours that are engaged by procurement staff to departmental users. Of these items that were listed here, to the chair lady's point, the percentage of spend with cooperative purchasing would be a new data collection point for us. Active suppliers with contracts greater than $1 million, as well as those numbers of suppliers responding to competitive solicitations, along with those disadvantaged suppliers responding, would be a new data collection point for us. We collect currently data on overall spend, spend with individual ethnic groups and women. The number of debriefs would be a new data collection point for us. All of the items that are listed under procurement efficiency are currently, that data is currently being collected with the exception of the last bullet, which we collect some variation of that data. It'd be a matter of presenting it to you as a percentage of the total. And then all of the professional development items are new to an extent, so consistent with what's being reported in the Finance Department's citizen-centric reporting. Along the training element for departmental users, we've been reporting that as hours, so we'll present that to you as hours unless you all want it to be the number of individuals or the number of sessions, which is also on the KPI report for your information.
But that's already a data set you have. Yes.
Yes, I mean, we collect the data already, but we don't present it that way.
You know what I see on this report that's new?
What?
Lots of things are vendor related.
The goal
Which
is...
means we've got a lot of opportunity in that area to work with our vendor and our vendors and our suppliers.
The goal is to have an effort toward vendor performance management, ultimately.
Yeah, and I think some of the other things that we're trying to do, I mean, this speaks to that gap that we've had on addressing those communities at work, because we've been so focused, I think, internally on some of our day-to-day operations. So I'm glad to see it.
Another piece that, if I could just draw attention to, is around professional development, because I think it's important to let employees know that they're valued. And one way to do that is to provide them with the tools and the equipment they need to be the best at what they do. So,
and I think this vendor-related information is really important, because they don't always know what you all do. And through starting to identify specific metrics and making that available publicly, then you can begin to kind of tell your story about the good work that's going on in this division.
So it's an opportunity there for both newsletters, both internally and externally, and we can add this as some of these elements that are not already provided in the KPIs as specific, report information for you all going forward.
Okay. Start.
Great, good information.
Okay, good.
My question is kind of not exactly related, but a term that it's on the overall spending with disadvantaged businesses. I kind of wanted to ask John, and I guess we can dive deeper later, disadvantaged business as opposed to maybe diversity business as opposed to minority business. And so it dawned on me that, in a lot of discussions with friends and even how we do business, disadvantaged is kind of a term that almost allows you to stay in that position if you're trying to grow. And so if we were to capture or encourage minority-owned businesses that are not, quote, disadvantaged, in other words, if there's a certain monetary value that keeps them being disadvantaged, and then they grow their business to a certain level, they're still a minority business. And so maybe it may not be a question to be answered right now, but certainly it's one that we need to dive into.
That disadvantaged business is specifically defined somewhere in the code. Nikki, do you know that?
4.44.
Y'all know that code. You sleep with that one.
Yeah.
4.44. Okay. All right. Let's look at it real quick.
4.44.
Yeah. 4.44010.
4.44, I'm there, but 410.
85.
Okay, all right, I'm there.
Procurement code.
Small business which is owned or controlled by a majority of persons, not limited in the number of minority groups who have been deprived of opportunity. Okay, so it doesn't really, so I guess, is there a limitation for a disadvantage? If a disadvantaged business, it doesn't have anything to do with monetary status or...
It does have to do with size.
Yes,
because it's specific
it
to
does.
small businesses, and that is also defined as a business that's independently owned and operated.
Top of
Yeah,
the next page.
top of the next page has that
Okay.
definition.
And that is the benefit of having the breakout bullet below it, which gives you the spend with those individual groups, because
Okay.
that speaks to their status as a minority or woman, regardless of their
So
size.
this proposed measure is under this definition, is what you're proposing.
That will include small business, service disabled vets as well, in that overall number.
So when you count small business and they happen to be diversity or disadvantaged business, are they counted twice? And I know that we've, and so in fairness to what you're doing, Brian, like you see the 28% number, and then some of that 28% small business, right? I think that's
So
the
they're not counted.
We need to
No.
make sure that they're not duplicated
No,
entries.
we had very pointed conversation about making sure that the report that Brian presents to you shows, if you try to add the numbers up on that top line, they're not going to add up, because what you have is a total number of small businesses regardless of their ethnicity, gender, or whatever, but then the minority-owned businesses is a breakout as well, so that you don't have duplication.
Well, it sounds like it would be.
Yeah, so small
But they're not being
business
added. They're not being added for an aggregate total.
Right, but I think what you're saying is, does small business include the minority businesses that are small?
essentially.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
It does. It does. But it's not being double counted in the sense that they're not being summed together to get a total of disadvantaged business. The disadvantaged business number is not going to fully include on the report that you have all of those small businesses, because currently the way that the system is set, we can't distinguish between those small businesses who are ethnic minority or woman-owned and those that are owned by, say, white male-owned businesses.
Is there a need for this to be broken out at some other level so that people don't get confused about duplicate counts and things like that? It's just a question. I
That's
don't
kind of
know.
what I'm trying to get at. Like
Yeah.
I said, it may not answer it, but
Yeah.
and we didn't really cover this, but I think that I'd like to have Brian Gleason join us on our committee as well as you, John, because whatever we come up for air, and perhaps Nikki can weigh in on it. I want it to be, we want to challenge the, I hate to say this, we want to challenge the system legally. If we can do something better to improve something, then we want to be able to say, hey, this is a recommendation. We want to make it strong. It has teeth in it. Then those kind of codes, if they can be challenged to better our situation, then that's what I'd be looking for.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
John? Okay. Any other questions on any of these other metrics? Because is it your recommendation that these are doable,
Yes.
okay, with your existing resources in terms of
We need to make a motion for this arrangement, or
I don't think it's
No.
necessary. I mean, they can,
Yeah.
that's kind of a departmental function.
So I say go forth and do good,
Thank you.
okay?
yeah, I was thinking that you were taxing yourself with a lot of details, but
That's all
I'm
we
sure
want to
sure you know what you're doing. So
Can I just add?
Sometimes, yeah, you can address that, because sometimes people get really excited about data until it's time to start collecting it.
Well,
And then it becomes a chore. You spend a lot of time trying to get to the data. So I just want to make sure that these are things that are naturally achievable through normal operations.
the percentage of spend through cooperative purchasing under cost savings, actually, I guess I can make an argument that that's under procurement efficiency as well, because it can be, the opportunity cost there for Metro can be pretty good if we're able to use cooperative purchasing to some extent. But that's going to be data collection, honestly, that will be managed by me, because all of those cooperative opportunities have to be approved by me. As it relates to the vendor related metrics, the first one related to active suppliers with contracts greater than $1 million, we maintain an active contracts list. So that's something that we already do, but we've not reported out because we've not thought about it in terms of vendor activity in the past. We've not reported out the numbers of vendors or even, an average of the vendors that we have, close to 20,000 who actually have active contracts. And given the amount of procurement spend that we have, $1 million seemed like a reasonable, number that we should be looking at in terms of those contractors who have contracts. The average number of suppliers responding to competitive solicitations, the system has a function already built into it that allows us to look at proposing or offering vendors on each solicitation. We've not been using that. Brian's group has been using that reporting with regularity. But as a procurement function, we've not really been using that functionality the way that we can. So my point there is we already have a mechanism built into the system that will allow us to pull that data as well. So looking at all of these, I think that the important piece of it was not to create such a laborious set of data points that would increase the potential that we would not be able to provide the data with the regularity that we're offering to you. And so that was important to me. And not to overload staff who are already very overloaded.
Okay. I just
But
want
you
to make
want
sure
to be
it's
able to look back at this data and see how you can use it, and that makes sense. You would, because you start asking questions like, man, I wish we knew how many folks actually were interested in roofing contracts or whatnot. You look back and see who consistently reaches out or tries to bid, and that's good intel, I think.
Okay.
So I got an interesting question this week from somebody.
Can I interrupt you just a quick second, just because I feel like I need to do full disclosure?
Okay, go ahead.
On the report to your question, the column here,
Just for the listening audience, can you tell them what
we're looking at the disadvantaged business report. The column header that reads total disadvantaged business on this report is not consistent with the definition. It is strictly those ethnic minorities and women. So when you look at that sum, it is not consistent with that. It is just ethnic minorities and women, and then the breakout of small business such that it is exclusive to that number is separate. I just want to make sure that's clear. Because we talked a good bit about double counting and over counting and et cetera.
So the question, I'm remembering this just because it's a data point, and somebody asked me this question, John, you're aware of it. They said, can you give me a list of contracts that Metro has that are subject to funding availability that we can cancel?
All of them?
It's terminated.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much all of them.
A list. Can you give me a list?
And standard contract language,
So,
yeah.
so my response was,
Huge depending upon it.
Well, I can't give you a list of something like that. You probably ought to talk to department heads about what services are provided under particular contracts, because you could have service or performance impacts before you just start canceling contracts. That was my response. But but when I get those types of general questions, what types of data might be available just about the contract universe? Maybe things that are not, I just want to have a short discussion around, you may not be tracking them now, but what information does exist kind of like in your data world?
We have an active contracts list. So all of the contracts that are out there that are active, we have a full list of them.
So I could share at any given time a list of active contracts in Metro.
It's got the contract number, it's got the vendor, it's got a description of the contract.
Scope.
Help me out, a description of what it is.
5-year contract value?
Yeah, the value that's on the contract,
Okay.
yes. The only thing the report doesn't generate right now is the spend that's been against it at the current time. Not saying that going forward with the
Well,
upgrade of the system.
exactly.
There is a reporting mechanism tool that they have developed that I'm very interested in seeing if we can pull that in a very simple method.
And with both
Who
of
is
the
that
systems,
report available to?
it's on the web.
It's on the web. I would just like to be able to point someone to that link
Yeah,
if I'm asked a follow-up question about it.
yeah. And
Can you
Terry,
send me the link?
Yeah, because I want to, because it's not on the web.
It's supposed to be on the
Yeah, it's not.
Well, we're going to get it on the
We
web.
were putting it on the internal Metro side, but it's not on the web. I think there were some instructions given to an individual to do it.
Okay, it's supposed to be on the web. Okay.
Okay, well,
So-
we will follow up on that and see. I just really want to, I think Michelle knows this. I'm a fan of open data and,
Transparency.
and making sure that information that is routinely available is accessible by anybody that might want to use it. And it's always easy for me when I can just say, here's a link, go look.
Well, to Terry's point about the upgrade, we're moving to a place where our accounting system and our procurement system are going to be on a single platform and integrated. That will really hopefully give us a lot of business analytics that are going to be useful to us. Because today, we can't easily tell you how much we've spent against a contract. But once that happens, we can manage performance a lot better.
You start here, and then you just add, and you add just as you become more sophisticated with your tracking abilities. So.
And with our data collection, too.
John, did you want to have any comments on that specific request that I got?
Well, if I recall, the request was what contracts could be canceled for lack if funding wasn't available.
And that's in
that
every
would be
contract.
20,000 contracts
Every contract.
if funding was not available.
Yes.
I don't know that we have 20,000 contracts out.
However many contracts.
How many do we have? That's what I was like, is that
How many active contracts?
How many active contracts do we have? I don't know.
I think there's around 4,000.
Okay.
I'll have to look and see. We ran a report yesterday and some training, so we were having about on the database system.
That may be something good on your key indicator report, just
At any given time, the number of active contracts.
Yeah, to date or whatever.
Just add it to the report.
And put it as of May 10th,
This is how
2020.
many active contracts.
Michelle has asked for a dashboard that she can also put out there to project, to allow departments to see what's coming up, what's expiring, kind of, so they have a knowledge base of the workload and vendors know what's coming too. So we're working on that.
Kind of like a forecast of sorts. What we've been doing is just touching departments to let them know, but to have a forecast is
It's a head start
good.
just to have the existing list out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you just have to, one thing at a time, and then become more sophisticated.
Yep.
Okay, so that was an interesting request that I got. I think that's it. We have our next meeting in August. Is that correct, Michelle?
Is that correct, Judy? Yes.
Okay.
August 9th.
Okay. If there's no more business, we will adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
I'm working on my list.
So.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.